families.
Our scripture reading today comes out of the book of Philippians, chapter 1, verses 12 through 26. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for my defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to inflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Yes, I will rejoice, for I know that through your prayers and the help of your Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance, as it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not at all be ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, through in life or in death. For me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, yet which I shall choose, I cannot tell. I am hard-pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is much better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all through your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus because of my coming to you again. This is the word of God for the people of God.
I know a man who's a university chaplain, and if you ask him, he said, what's the best part of your work? He'd say, well, it's my privilege. I get to be a part of young adults who are probably making the 3, 4, 5 most important decisions in their life. Choices about career and education, relationships and marriage. And he says, I get to be there to see them navigate those crossroad moments. I get to listen to them. I get to share with them, to preach to them. You know, what is it going to be? Clinical work or research? Who shall I marry, the farmer from Ashe County or the stockbroker from Seattle? We just revel in the wonder of being people of choice, of having options. In fact, in our current cultural landscape, it's almost as though success and failure for a person hinges on how many options we enjoy. Well, sometimes it's a little too much. I was in one of these 64 flavor ice cream places, and the guy in front of me, he was stymied. You could see it written all over his face, analysis paralysis. He was studying the list of 64, and he turned to me and said, I'm going to the back of the line. It's too much. He said, give me good old Dairy Queen, chocolate, vanilla. Well, for the most part, though, we revel in the power of being decisive, of having these choices. And we think about our grandparents and almost have a wistful sadness that they didn't have all the options we have today, particularly our grandmothers. Think about them occupationally, vocationally, nurse, teacher, seamstress, homemaker. Nothing wrong with those choices, but not the range of opportunities that are available to women today. It's hard to almost imagine fulfillment and wholeness when we just have a paucity of options. Choice, isn't that One of the ways we exercise our highest human capacity. I'm not just a vine clinging to what happens to be near me. I'm not a piece of flotsam just being pushed down the stream of life. No, we like to say, I'm doing what I'm doing and the way I'm doing it because that's what I decided to do. Robert Frost, that oft-quoted line, he celebrated the empowerment of choice. Two roads converged in yellow wood, and seeing I could not travel both, I took the one less traveled by. You see, he chose, decided. I'm going to get off track for just about 2 or 3 minutes, though, and I want to say that I think I'm at the point I'm not as enchanted as I used to be with the wonder of having all these options. I think part of it's just my generation. I'm become a little jaundiced. When my generation came down the pike, wow, we were given the greatest measure of freedom that any generation that ever moved about this earth. I think we had more options available than any of those that had come before us. And in some ways, I saw my generation almost choking on the choices. What did we end up with? A supermarket of desire. I can choose, but choose what? And so here on this Independence Day weekend, I would have to confess that many of my generation probably would say they don't feel all that free, even in a very free country. You know, with overstocked medicine cabinets and overmortgaged homes and overprogrammed children and 65 to 70-hour work weeks. Free is not what some feel. End of that little talk. That's not the sermon, because it's really the other side of it. It's not about a plethora of options. It's about a man who's faced with hardly any alternatives. It's Paul, and he's in jail. 8x6 jail cell. Can you think of anyone more devoid of option and choice than a person in jail? This isn't what Paul had chosen. Earlier he had written to his friends in Rome. He says, I'm coming through Rome. We'll have time for a covered dish dinner together. That's about it. I'm not going to be staying with you. I'm on my way to Spain. That was Paul's great dream. He was always looking for places to preach he hadn't been before. He says, I'm running out of new places to preach. I'm headed to Spain. I want you to help me in my venture. And then he didn't get Spain, did he? He was stopped, stymied in Rome. He's in jail. One commentator said it made him think of Geronimo. You remember Geronimo? Great freedom apostle of his Native American people. So he's in prison in Fort Sill in Oklahoma. In fact, you can go to the national park there and they'll show you his prison cell. There's no flooring. There's just an earthen floor. There's one little window way up high. You just had to look up toward the sky. And if you look there in that earthen floor, you'll see a trench. And you ask the ranger, what's that? He'll say it's Geronimo's trench. He said he wore it out. He dug it, pacing back and forth, back and forth. Is that Paul? Probably somewhat. He's stymied, stopped. He's in a jail cell, back and forth, maybe banging his cup on the bars. And, he says, do I have any mail? But Paul's not just pacing. Here's the wonder of it. He's still writing. That's what's happening here in this letter. You need to know that this letter that we heard from today is written from a jail cell. And Paul says, friends, I want you to know in Philippi, my friends in Philippi, that I can report to you that this has been a season of advancement. What kind of advancement? Oh, the advancement of the gospel, Paul would say. Look, all these guards that I deal with every day, they know the reason I'm here. I'm here because of Messiah Jesus. And that piqued their curiosity. And now every one of them have learned about him. Okay, Paul, we're going to give you license to have a little preacher overstatement. You know preachers, we love to just stretch the band of credulity a little bit. Come on, Paul. Let's face the facts. Here are the facts. The leader of the church is in jail. Caesar has Paul. And when Caesar has Paul, Caesar has the church. At this point in the life of the church, so goes Paul, so goes the church. And so is Paul just trying to have a stiff upper lip here, keeping the people in Philippi from folding the tent? Look, Paul, you have no power over your destiny at this moment. You can't move forward, you can't move back. Very little choice. Okay, you had some theological discussions with some Roman GIs, but if you can't talk about getting out and around or beyond this predicament, how can we talk about advancement of the gospel? Well, that's Paul's message. I wonder if part of the message is that where he's at, it's where we spend some of our lives. I mean, you may never spend the night in jail, but don't you know what it's like to be at a place in life, in a moment? You don't really feel like you can move forward, can't move back. You're not dealing with the multiplicity of options. It's like the alternatives have been taken away. You feel like you're cramped. You feel like you've been pushed in a corner. There's little room to move. You're just living with what you're stuck with or what has come your way. Dante in that expansive work, Divine Comedy, had this line. He said, in the middle of my journey in life, I found myself in a dark wood where the straight way was lost. Did you hear that? I found myself in a dark wood. He didn't choose it, it chose him. We have these 5-year plans, and all of a sudden, just evaporate. We try to get ahead in life, and then unaccountably, something happens. Something interferes, something intrudes, something interrupts. Accident, weather, disease, sickness, grief, the general cussedness of life, Murphy's Law. We can't move forward, we can't move back. So what do you do? What do you do when you seem to have no alternative, no choice? Well, you can shake your fist at heaven and say that the world is out of joint. You can go try to crawl under a rock somewhere and just howl about the unfairness, injustice of it all. You can turn your face into a frown and just fill the air with cynical comments about life. You can turn your voice into a perpetual whine. Paul's not whining. Listen, he says, I choose to rejoice. I choose to go on living, go on serving. Paul says, I really don't know how this is going to come out. I really don't know. He says, it could be life or it could be death. But either way, it's going to be good. He said, if I live, then I have this message of Jesus to share with people. If I die, I'm God's beloved, I'm God's bounty. So he says, I choose to rejoice. It's like saying life upon life, grace upon grace. I choose to go on living. How can Paul really use the word choose? My goodness, he's not a judge, he's not a jury. What kind of choice can he make in a prison cell that has any significance? Do you think Paul is telling us that even when you're in a dark wood, even when you're in a very cramped place of life, you can choose. You can choose the lens by which you see the world. You think Paul is telling us that, contrary to popular opinion, reality is not what happens to us. Reality is what we believe about what happens to us. It's what we make out of what happens to us. Even when we're pushed in a corner, we get to decide what's more real, our limitations or our possibilities, our fears or our hopes. Paul's in jail. He says, I choose to rejoice. I choose to go on serving and living. You got to hand it to Paul. He's willing to do business with every part and parcel of life. He doesn't know if it's going to be life. He doesn't know if it's going to be death. And live he did. My goodness, he turned a prison dock into a pulpit. Turned a jail cell and to an author's workshop. But Paul is not saying in this that all the power of this is just coming from his resilience. No, he's going to talk to you about a resilient power beyond him. And he thanks the friends in Philippi for helping him experience that. He says, I know you have been praying for me. I know you have been praying that here in this cell that I'm going to experience the presence of Christ. Look, Paul was aware. He was so aware the lengths to which God's love had gone to catch up with him in the first place. And he didn't think something small like jail or death would trump the living, giving power of the risen one. Do you hear what Paul's saying here? In an 8x6 jail cell, he's saying, in this experience I have with a living Lord, there is a way when there is no way. I know some of you know that resource. You've experienced that resource. Fred Craddock talks about growing up a little boy in Middle Tennessee. His family lived on a farm. There was an abandoned farm next to them, but this couple came to live there. It was wintertime. There was a cabin, small outbuilding, wood stove. So the man and woman moved in, and it was wintertime. It was cold. And so the man went out and he pulled boards from the outhouse and outbuilding, and he burned them in the wood stove. After a while, there was no outbuilding, so it got colder. And he went around the back of the house, and he pulled some boards from the back of the house and put them in the wood stove, and it got colder. And now he's pulling boards from the front of the house, and it got colder. And the man and the woman, they got up and moved, and they cussed the wood stove, and they cussed that house. And Craddock said out back there was an axe, chopping block, an acre upon acre of available woodland. And Craddock said, the man burned up his own house to keep his house warm. And Craddock said, it made me think about all the people in life who think, I have my own resources, I have my own strength, I have my own power to handle this and that, and they burn it all up. And the letter arrives, the phone call comes, the crisis is too big. It's too big. Well, the crisis has come for Paul. Does he have his own strength and resilience? Yes, but he has more than that. You see, he has more than that. He knows the strength of the risen one. What did he learn from that? He learned that the cords of God's love are never severed, no matter how dark or convoluted the path may be. Jesus knew that. Isn't that why he told us, don't become your disease, don't become your imprisonment, don't become your pain, don't become the brick wall you just ran into. Why? Because when there's nothing left, when all the options have been taken off the table, there is still the Lord of life who never runs out of life, never runs out of love. Her name is Shirley. She doesn't live here. I knew her years ago. I would say that she was at a point in her life she found herself in a dark wood. It wasn't a place that you would choose for yourself. Some of it was because of choices she had made. Some of it had to do with the hard-to-take things that had come her way. But she wasn't in a good place. It was a cramped place. Lost her job, lost her husband, and a lot of her possessions. But she told me about this dream. It wasn't a vision. It was a dream. She had a dream. In the dream, she was in her bed, and she looks up, and she sees Jesus at her bedside, and he has his arms stretched out to bless her. And the surprising thing was that he was there at her bedside with her. And she looked at him, and she said, Why are you here? Don't you know where I'm at in my life? Don't you know who I am? Why are you here? Why? And she said, he answered. Because, he said, that's who I am. That's who I am. Oh, okay. Bedside, roadside, graveside, wherever you are, there he'll be. Why? Because that's who he is. May we know that. Not just here, but may we know that here. And then as Kenneth Carrier said, then maybe we'll know there's no box that life can make for us which the sides can't be flattened out and the top blown off to create a dance floor to celebrate life. No box. Sides can't be flattened. Box can't be blown off to create a dance floor. I will rejoice, said Paul. My goodness. Paul's in a box. He's in a 6x8 jail cell. He can't move forward. He can't move backward. But he said, I choose to rejoice.